Aimee, and Paige, and I'm going to let each of them quickly introduce themselves.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Elsa. I'm currently attending Weber State University with a major in zoology and a minor in communications. I started getting into environmental education when I was 15, and I got my volunteer position at the Living Planet Aquarium down in Draper. I've since been there for 3 years, and now I also work at the zoo on their education staff.
Hi guys, my name is Steven. I am a junior at West High School here in downtown Salt Lake. I got my start in environmental education as a volunteer educator at Utah's Hogle Zoo. And then also that year I was a volunteer educator at the Love and Living Planet Aquarium. I have since grown and gotten a new role at Tracy Aviary on the Teen Advisory Board. So we create events for this teen STEM cafes, hoping to inspire other teens about job opportunities in the STEM field.
I'm kind of nervous with that. My name is Aimee, and I'm a student at Weber State University. I'm a senior studying political science. I help lead an environmental group on campus called the Environmental Ambassadors, and we do a lot of campus outreach for students to get them involved in sustainability. And I also work in the Energy and Sustainability Office on campus. So.
Hi, I'm Paige Morgan. I'm the senior member of this group. I'm a whole 25 years old. I've been into environmental education, I think, since I was 18. My dad reminded me of a story when I used to pick up gum off the side of gym slides, and I'd bring it to him and be like, look, I cleaned it up, and then he would give me candy, so then I'd pick up trash as we walked by it from then on to get more candy. But it actually started when I was 18, more serious environmental education. Thank you.
Okay. And you guys can hold, everybody can hear me, right?
Yes.
All right. And then of course, this is the 5 under 25, but we only have 4. So we'll share a little bit on behalf of our 5th awardee. Her name is Kimah Kaur, and she went to the University of Utah. I believe she's also 23, 24 years old. And her work and focus has been on developing curriculum around environmental education to serve underserved communities. So she worked directly with a number of schools here in Salt Lake City on the west side to develop curriculum that's continuing on at the Women's Resource Center at the University of Utah. And she is just beginning law school in Boston this year. So she had some remarks to contribute as well. We're sad that she can't be here, but she was the 5th person that we honored. And there were a number of submissions. There are a number of youth doing really incredible work. So we are delighted to have you all here today. Thank you. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into some questions. I think one of the nice things to look at first is, what are some of the good things that are happening? What are the solutions and ways that we can work on improving EE? And our first question is for Paige. So someone who is a university student, can you think of some specific strategies or practices that schools and organizations can use to foster environmental education?
Yes, thank you for that question.
It's the EE talk show.
Okay, so I came up with a couple for strategies. The biggest thing I found is that not many people know the problems that are behind the scenes, because most of them are behind the scenes. The schools are dealing with them, the cities are dealing with them. So if there's a big problem that you're trying to get the community to change, just bring it to light, bring it to people's attention. So for example, waste reduction. So you could have an event like for USU, it'd be out in the quad. You'd have a big, where students would stuff their face, and then they would see how much waste after having this event stuffing face would be, and then you would take those students and you'd be like, okay, this is how much of that waste that all of you just produced would go into the compost, how much would go into the trash, and then how much of that you could recycle. And just to see that in front of them would be a strategy to help in waste reduction. Practice that my husband helped me come up with was to have a 1-credit class, which would be really cool. That might take a lot of paperwork, but and it would be to show students, say, how to compost or how to garden. That's us city folk don't really see that behind the scenes, how long it takes to grow a carrot, or how to compost and how worms are just awesome. So just that would be a practice. So strategy would be bringing the problem to light, and a practice would be, of course, education.
Awesome. Anybody else? No pressure. We can move on to our next question. Thanks. So this one is for Steven. So what role do you think teachers should play in helping students explore environmental education topics?
So as a high school student, our main focus is getting into college, and there's a lot of pressure to get into college. I think, especially at West High School, there's a push to get into the Ivy Leagues and get into a good school. So we're very concerned with making our resumes and making just our transcript look as good as possible. So we're very focused on that, and we're also focused on having a social life. So I think as a teacher, what I would like as a student is to have someone who can give us a framework that as a leading student could come in and take over that project. So we don't really have the time or the energy to develop a program for environmental education, but if we have a teacher who's really passionate about environmental education, if we could have them construct a program that is more student run, then I think there would be some students who would be more than willing to come in and help work with the teacher. But it's very daunting as a high school student to come in and start their own program, which is in environmental education something that we're having to do, especially in high school. So if we could have that teacher to be that moral support and to have a program that we could just come into and lead right into, that would be amazing.
Excellent. Anybody else? Okay, Elsa.
I think teachers are role models. So we spend our whole life growing up with teachers, whether you're in preschool, kindergarten, any of the school grades. You sometimes will spend multiple years with one teacher. Like for me in college, I've had many professors teaching me a lot of different classes, and they kind of become your mentors and your role models throughout the year. You look up to them when you're little. Your teachers are like almost like a second parent. You're spending so much time in their classrooms listening to what they say. So if your teachers can become a good influence to you, I think they can kind of help spread that love for environmental education at a young age.
Wonderful, thanks. And then I have some remarks from Kimah that she wanted to share with us. So regarding the question of what role do you think teachers should play in helping students explore EE? And she noted that since I have graduated from the University of Utah, I've had time to reflect on this question. Teachers and professors should trust their students and the ideas they have. A student may bring different experiences and views, and they should be encouraged to engage in projects inspired by their ideas. Having support from professors encouraged me to take on a project I was interested in. Teachers should support and trust their students, especially students from marginalized communities, and engage their ideas and perspectives. So we're glad she was able to share that with us. Our next question is for Aimee. So how does technology and digital media fit into some of these solutions that we've been starting to discuss?
So we all know that social media is extremely powerful, and the youth have definitely taken that to their advantage with humor and confidence. And we were talking about it, and we all realized that the whole plastic straw thing really did start because of young people going to social media and just talking about how much they hate straws and the impacts it has. And now I have friends on Facebook, on Instagram, like making pledges of no longer using plastic straws, of pledging to no longer use plastic bags, and like this whole big hate on plastic. And I feel like the youth are definitely taking that to their advantage, and schools should definitely hop on that train and speak the humor that the kids are speaking. Add that humor, because that's the humor that we know. It's very comfortable to us, it's familiar, and if you're able to make it very, I guess, something we can connect with, then we're going to listen to it. And eventually the hope is that we're going to be thinking of that Instagram post, thinking of that Snapchat story, and be conscious of our actions and realizing like, yeah, we should probably not use our car so often or leave them idling. It's really that. And I really give props to Weber State University and their whole use on social media, especially their Snapchat stories, because when we, environmental ambassadors, have events on campus and we use that Snapchat story, kids come to our events because they're connected to social media, and environmental education can definitely take that to their advantage. And again, with humor and really not so formal language, because we don't really connect with that. It's, it's the whole memes. It's the humor behind social media that we know. So, yeah.
Okay, hold on to the microphone. Our next question is for Elsa. That's you. So how has mentorship really helped to elevate your journey as an environmental leader? And were there any specific mentors that helped you on your journey?
All right, so throughout my time doing environmental education, I have had many, many mentors, and if any of you guys have read my bio, I said that I did not have one specific one because I've been in so many different roles doing environmental education. When I first started at the aquarium, doing my education volunteer work, I had one mentor who then went on to do a different position, so I got changed to a different supervisor who now has been my mentor for over the past 3 years, and I definitely look up to her a lot because she helps support me, as well as if any of you guys know Melissa Halverson, who's here today. I've worked with her for over 3 years as well, and she's definitely been a big mentor. She's pushed me to teach Girl Scout camps with her, to teach summer camps, to work on any project where I'm helping teach little kids. So kind of as I go through my different roles, there's always a different mentor there to help guide me. I'm not going to forget my parents. They have definitely been there telling me, like, if you really like to do something, you should just put all your time and energy into doing that instead of putting your time and energy into something that you really don't want to do. So they've kind of helped push me through the environmental education. So I would definitely thank all of those people for getting me here today.
I also have a lot of mentors. There's a woman named Olga Antonio in the Access and Diversity Center at Weber State University. And with all of my mentors, I think the biggest thing that they can help me with, and which they have been helping me with, is encouragement. Because sometimes I feel like, do I have the proper knowledge to act on this issue? Or do I have the ability to even engage in this topic because I don't know A, B, and C? And I feel like all of my mentors are always providing me constant encouragement, from Olga to Jennifer Bodine, who was like, yes, go do this fellowship, and to my mom, Queen, who always tells me I can do everything and anything. So,
as a teenager and as a young person, I didn't have a car to get anywhere. So it was really up to my parents to, get me places where I wanted to go. And they were really great at seeing my passion and being able to guide me where I into a field that would foster that passion. So I think it's my parents who have really driven me to where I am today.
They actually drove you there.
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And then I did want to share Kimah's response as well. And she said that she had many mentors with a variety of perspectives. Working with women of color has been especially important to her. Even if I don't, I'm speaking in her words, even if I don't look like everyone else, I have a perspective, voice, and experience in the EE movement. I've had to look beyond the university to find mentors to support me, and sometimes it was hard to share my perspective. Along my journey as an EE leader, mentors encouraged me to take up space, contribute to the movement, and talk about issues related to the environment, including how the environmental issues impact people of color and marginalized communities. This experience shifted what I thought an EE leader looked like. And it really helped me to seek out professors who would support my ideas. So it's really kind of interesting to hear her story as well, about how she was able to find a community to help support her. So mentors really do come in all shapes and sizes. And now our next question is for Stephen. And can you share a specific success story about the impact of environmental education? I'm sure many people have.
So I spent my summer in Santa Barbara. I was working with a lab, the Recovery and Resilience Lab, which is affiliated with the Marine Science Institute on campus. And my task in the lab was to work on studying apex predators and how apex predators shape food webs. So I got to work with an aggregation of leopard sharks off of the coast of Goleta, which is a little town in Santa Barbara, and got to see how impactful a an apex predator is in shaping the entire environment. We saw that with the reduction of an apex predator, the entire food chain and the food web just disappears. So that was something cool that I got to work on this summer.
My focus is in recycling and waste reduction, and then kind of clever ideas of how to reuse items. So my biggest success story was definitely a reuse program. So when for people who are in the college system, when students move out in spring, they generate a lot of waste because they just need to leave and they don't care what they leave behind. So at USU, all that was there for them to put these unwanted items was the trash can, and each dorm would have a trash can the size of a construction site bin, those enormous ones that there would be 3 to fit this room, and that would be one of those per dorm that would be emptied twice a week. That's how much waste, like about just 500 students would create. It's intense, which that all goes to the landfill. So there's a program called True Blue Reuse at USU, and we set out donation bins so on their way to the dumpster they could be like, oh wait, I could donate this and it could be reused. Then our team sorts it during the summer, and it's sold back to those students because they just need the same items, they just didn't have anywhere to store it. So we, through just making it more efficient and like actually just making it more organized, we turned the True Blue Reuse program into looking like a yard sale, because we would just dump those items back because we didn't have enough resources. And we bought clothing racks to hang up all the clothes and a good space, and so we made it like a thrift store boutique, and we were able to raise our prices a little bit, which made us look more exclusive and therefore more economically viable. So we were able to check off all the boxes. So definitely that felt really good to put in all those circles that socially responsible, to still, we were cheaper than all the thrift stores still with those raised prices, economically viable where we were still making a profit, which we gave to nonprofits, and then environmentally responsible because we prevented that stuff from going into the trash. So good for the ego.
So this past summer, I served a fellowship with Sunrise Movement, and it's a nonprofit organization who is working in 5 key states, mostly on the East Coast, who are trying to get candidates to make climate change a forefront in politics, basically. And they would do that by supporting candidates who sign the No Money Fossil Fuel Pledge, by pledging they won't take money from the fossil fuel industry. And in Pennsylvania, we basically canvassed, phone banked, did volunteer outreach, and all sorts of great things for a candidate named Jess Keene, who, if elected, would be the first woman in Pennsylvania to ever get elected in Congress. And we basically went door to door knocking in the neighborhoods, because we live right in Pennsylvania in a city called Lancaster. And it just felt so empowering to talk to people about the fossil fuel industry and its impact on climate change, and the ways that they can help to basically make a change by taking civic action. So for that, it was very empowering for myself, especially going into the Spanish-speaking communities and talking in Spanish to all sorts of people, because the Mexican accent is very different from the Puerto Rican accent, from the Cuban accent. So that whole interaction and just talking about the same issue and coming to consensus that, yes, we need to do something about this. I'm going to vote. And I'm just like, yeah, you vote. You care about climate change and the environment. So it was awesome.
All right, so my success story is also at the aquarium. Sorry, all my stories are from there. I was on the Girl Scout Council there, so I created this program. It was based off of a patch that Girl Scouts could earn called the Wow Wonders of Water program. So basically what I did is I read through the book and kind of shaped my own program after that, where girls were given 3 options about either a reusable or like a sustainable option that they wanted to learn more about, and then go out and teach others. So my 3 options were learning about how to use reusable water bottles instead of plastic. One of them was learning about water use in the state of Utah, and I can't remember what my 3rd one was, but the Girl Scouts always picked the reusable water bottles, probably because it sounded easy to them. They don't really care about sprinklers. So we would make these big signs, and they would draw all these facts about reusable water bottles that they would learn, and they would go out onto the floor of the aquarium with a table, and we actually had like 15 Girl Scouts that would just talk to all the guests that would walk by. And as the guests walked by, they would run out there with their signs, and they would just start talking to them about like, oh my gosh, you have a reusable water bottle, like you're so great, you need to keep using them, and they would like get super involved with all these facts. And as they're walking by, all the guests would actually get pretty involved too, because who doesn't want to talk to like this little 8-year-old that's holding up this poster with like a whale on it, and they're talking about water bottles will save the whales. So it's really cool to see how little kids that I have impacted can go back on and impact older generations of parents and grandparents and even kids that were just a tiny bit older than them.
And I'm going to read a response from Kimah. So I put together a project for young women in high school that I was working with in a mentor-mentee capacity. I wanted to build a program to talk about climate change and environmental justice, but I didn't want to create sadness or a sense of despair in the young women I was working with. The focus of my program was on environmental justice movements across the world. While constructing the program, it became apparent how many of these movements were created by women to protect and sustain the environment in ways that were empowering and uplifting and allowed for a greater understanding of place in the environment. Many of these young women had never thought that when they walked to school, they're out in nature. They were able to see a shift from seeing nature as an abstract to feeling as though they were in it all the time. It was a powerful experience and allowed them to give voice to concerns they have. It also changed my perspective and felt huge. We were really talking about what it meant to be in the environment, and it was empowering. It provided a space for their unique perspectives. And I think one of the things that I wanted to remark on with all of the different projects we work on is just kind of the diversity of work that young folks are doing in environmental education. I think sometimes we, because of our field, we kind of get caught up into one view of what it might be. So I think there's a variety of ways for youth to be involved, and I really appreciate all of the hard work that you've all done. So now let's chat a little bit about some of the obstacles, and we're going to go to Paige for this question. So what do you see as the biggest obstacle preventing youth and their families from working and engaging in environmental education?
I felt the biggest obstacle preventing some families and youth is definitely economical. When you're having an unstable environment at home, there's no way you can see past that and say, oh, maybe I shouldn't have disposable dishware tonight. I should actually do the effort and wash the dishes. But instead, they're just like in so much mayhem from all the bills they have to pay. And I have this from my own experience. I was in high school in 2009 for the Great Recession, and we lost our home to foreclosure, lights were turned off, cars were stolen. I didn't get into environmental education for a while because my brain was in so disarray, and while it wasn't doing that, I was focused on boys. So it was really preoccupied. The dating scene was great. So, it's definitely, I really feel like we might tend to blame people for not thinking outside the box. Why are you idling, or why are you using so much disposable dishware, or just why aren't you thinking about this? I'm so concerned. Why aren't you concerned? And it's just there's so many other problems people are dealing with economically and socially that just we don't always consider. So I think that's the biggest obstacle right now. We've got to get over this.
I think one of the biggest obstacles that we come across in EE is we've got all these big world problems, and we tend to share that with kids in kind of an overwhelming way. So I know Elsa and I work a lot of this at the zoo, is how do we frame these big issues in a way that makes kids feel empowered and makes kids feel like they are a part of the solution. And not just something that's too overwhelming and the world is ending, kind of, but making them feel that they can take charge and they can actually be leaders and they can push the change that they want to see.
Sorry, going off of what Steven said, so I think kind of talking to people is a big obstacle. You want to be able to get your message across to every single person that you meet, whether it's a 5-year-old that's for me and Steven at the zoo that's really interested in maybe like a fish in a fish tank, to like grandparents who maybe are just learning about some of the things going on. So our framing practices would actually give us like specific words that you use. For like a little kid, you don't want to use the word pollution because they're going to get very negative connotations about that word, and they're forever going to think about pollution's overrunning our world. You want to use like bigger words, and I know carbon emissions is kind of hard for them, but you can explain it in a way that they'll understand and try to get them involved in like a community thing, whether it's tell your friends to ride your bike to school with you on Monday, or even bigger, which is like look for the Rocky Mountain Power Blue Sky Renewable Energy Program and try to get your family and neighbors involved in something that's going to help bring renewable energy to places near you. So I think it's trying to overcome the obstacle of reaching everyone through the words that you say, because not everyone's going to take to something you say to one person. Not everyone's going to agree with what you're saying.
Great, thanks. And I do really like that within kind of the obstacles that you all mentioned, there are some solutions to how to overcome them, which I think is really important. I think a lot of when we all met earlier, we really talked about kind of thinking about economic issues. Well, how can we frame it in a way to help people make better decisions? Well, maybe you're using a bunch of paper plates, but it'll actually be more cost effective for you to make this investment. So being able to help people make decisions that really fit their needs at the time, and being able to communicate with audiences where they're at, and using humor. So yeah, it's nice that you all are able to turn those things that you can identify as being challenges and making them work for you, which is really wonderful. And so then this question is for Aimee, and the question is, what kind of role do you think environmental education can play in environmental justice and social justice? And I think one of the reasons we bring this up is the environment doesn't exist on its own. We're also all part of the environment, and environmental issues impact everyone. So we'd love to hear what you think about that.
When I think of environmental justice, my mind automatically goes to the location of where fossil fuel plants are usually put, which is in vulnerable communities, being low income and people of color. When I think of environmental justice, I think of poverty. I think of poverty, and sometimes when people are poor, usually don't really get the healthiest types of foods. And I think of all sorts of systematic barriers that are put in place. And I feel like environmental education can respond to those barriers by acknowledging identity and being conscious in their word usage, microaggressions, understand them and try to avoid them at all costs. I think of social justice and how environmental education can step up and use their voice, because educators have an immense voice and students learn from you. I've learned from you, and sometimes I feel like educators should realize like you all have potential and you guys can help us out in so many ways. And I think using your voice and then rising up to the challenge by responding to those systematic barriers, being civically engaged, and reminding your students that environmental education is not limited to knowing the proper name of a tree, although that is important, but like also thinking of the social and economic barriers that are also put in place in all of that cycle in order to foster a sustainable society. So
Wonderful, thanks. The next question, and I'm going to let each of you answer this, so we can send the mic around, is what gives you the most hope for the future? Yeah, well, let's start with Paige.
So what gives me the most hope is I really like talking to my grandpa about some of the stuff I've done, and when he can be like, wow, you go, when he is the grumpiest man I've ever met. And he doesn't make exceptions for me either. It's not like I'm his favorite granddaughter. But when he can be impressed with like my work and then my friend's work, I'm like, wow, I went over that hurdle really tall, like whoop! And so that gives me a lot of hope when he's like, okay, I'm okay to leave this to you guys for the next generation. Like, I trust you with what we've done. So that gives me hope.
What gives me the most hope is my little brother, who, if you ask him what can be recycled, he'll look at the bottom and be like, if it's a triangle and it says 1 and 2, it can be recycled. So knowing that there's a younger generation, even below me, who can be educated and act on these changes, it's powerful.
What gives me the most hope is at our teen STEM cafes at the Aviary, what I love to see is when the teenagers that come in to hear our guest speakers, they come out and just hearing their conversations is really fun to see. Like, they talk about themselves seeing a future as them being leaders in environmental education, and it's always positive and nice to see that other people, and especially the younger generation, are gonna continue what you guys have started. So that gives me a lot of hope.
What gives me hope is the other kids and teenagers around me. So for me, being a teenager and seeing other teenagers being inspired to follow the things that I love, whether it's quitting using plastic straws or learning about endangered animals and how you can save them, I think it's really cool to see people take like one idea and become super inspired with it. Like my roommate up at college, she used to not really care about that much stuff, and I started telling her all about plastic straws, and now she's like super involved in that whole thing. So I think it's just seeing other people that are my age get involved with the things going on around us.
Awesome. And you could hold on a minute for more. And all of you give, I think, me and probably all of us in the audience a lot of hope as well, which is a wonderful feeling. And can you tell us, and we can actually start with Paige, about some of your personal aspirations for the future?
Okay. I practiced this one like 3 times with my mom. Okay. This is the wording. So I actually want to become a politician, and this comes from my mom because that's where I find the opportunity to shape a cohesive community to make them environmentally conscious. Okay, that was just word for word. So I really would like to be a politician because I think I will do the most good there. My brain seems to work best in that environment, and I bring a lot of humor to the scene, which that dark mass of politics just needs some more humor. So. I agree. It needs more humor.
I have thought of several things I can get involved with. I'm an undergrad, so I thought of going into grad school. I thought of sticking to the environmental educational sector so I can encourage others to understand environmental sustainability. But I really do feel like personally the most impact I can have is within politics, and I feel like policy, whether it's local, state, or national, is affecting everyone, and therefore I want to have a great impact to save my little 4-year-old brother's future, so politics.
I think I kind of see myself growing up to be hopefully an ambassador of a zoo or aquarium or even an aviary. I think there's a lot of good that zoos and aquaria play in environmental education, and but not many people know about that. So if I can be the face of an organization and spread that message of what the conservation work, what the EE work that these organizations are participating in, I think that'd make me feel really, really good.
All right, I'm kind of like Steven. Right now I'm torn between going into either zookeeping or aquarist work because I'm super into like marine animals. And who doesn't want to spend the rest of their life shoveling poop all day? I mean, it sounds like the dream job. Or I could go into zoo and aquarium education and work kind of like in a higher up management position is kind of what I'm thinking, because like Steven, I want to spread the message of conservation to everyone around me.
Awesome, thank you. So, here's a question for Steven. How can the environmental education community do a better job of engaging the younger generation as a whole?
I think you guys are doing a great job. But growing up, I think we're kind of like stuck in this old education system of like, here's your PowerPoint and I'm going to present to you for an hour and a half on this PowerPoint. But I know I grew and my passion developed when I really got that hands-on experience. I was very fortunate enough to be able to grow up only 5 minutes away from the zoo, and I had parents that were able to financially support me to go to the zoo, and that's really where I really developed that passion for animals and conservation. but not many children get that opportunity to do that. So if there's a way that we can ensure that all students have an opportunity to go to a zoo, go on a hike, just so they can get that hands-on experience too, because you're only going to be passionate about what you know and what you understand. So that is something that I would do for younger kids. And then as a high school student, there are some problems that I'm coming across going into EE. I know that I would benefit greatly from having more or less a map of the jobs that I can have in EE. I think since EE means so much and there's so many different genres of EE, if you will, if there could be a map for passionate high school students to see, like, oh, I could have this job in the political side of EE, or I could have this job in a zoo, that would be very beneficial, because I know there's a lot of passionate teens out there that just don't know what the possibilities are.
One thing I think that people can do to engage the younger generation is just like find those kids that have that one passion, especially as like a teacher or a mentor. You find that kid that's really interested in one thing and give them all the resources that you can, whether it's a book to read or a website to look at or a TV show to watch that's going to help them get somewhere with what they love.
Awesome. All right, and a final question from me is, can each of you share the one piece of advice about how to create the societal change that we're all looking for?
So my one piece of advice to get involved is just to get involved young. So I think a lot of us probably started as teenagers or even younger getting into environmental education. So just like, don't be afraid to stand out. Don't be afraid to like what you like. I know it's kind of scary at first, like you're like, I'm this 15-year-old that's got this weird obsession with fish and coral, and I could tell you anything you want to know, and everyone at high school thinks I'm really weird, but you just have to roll with it because it's going to pay off later in your life.
I guess my piece of advice would be to challenge yourself. I think there's a lot of teens that kind of just sit in their basement playing video games because they're not willing to challenge yourself, and because they're passionate, but they don't, they're afraid, like Elsa was saying. So my piece of advice would be to get off that computer and to immerse yourself into the environment around you and really challenge yourself to make a difference.
Okay, I have like more than one piece of advice. One, be inclusive, have empathy, get civically engaged, and support the younger generation with their passions, because yes, they can post on social media, but encourage them to take physical action and just support them in all ways possible. So, yeah.
My piece of advice would be to listen. I am currently working for a company that is conservative and Republican, and I'm quite liberal, and I learned definitely the other side of the coin. And if you just have, if you're wanting to change an audience, have sincere questions and then take the time to listen. I find that that works the best, and then ask those hard questions. My coworker is LDS, and I'm from California, and I have a lot of questions about that religion, and I was like, okay, but you guys are conservative, but it seems like the religion system is very socialistic, because you give, like, there's that 10%, and you have all these charities, and it feels almost like an internal socialistic type system. And her mind kind of, like, I could see it implode a little bit, but then she could still see that I was staring at her. She's like, oh, you care, okay. And then so she thought about it, and she explained it to me, which she just said that it feels really empowering to have, because it's local, that we can give to certain charities that we want, and that's why we give to the church, and then don't feel as willing to give for taxes, because that's a more, like, that money goes to more places than just where we want it to go within the church. And then my mind exploded, and then we both looked at each other like, this is a high-quality conversation. So listening would definitely be my advice, and asking sincere questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so very much. Everybody give these wonderful young people a hand. To open it up to questions, if anyone would like to ask a question.
all of you, just inspiring and engaging. But we have weaponized you, okay? We being elders, okay? We have indoctrinated you to go out and carry our message forward with your passion and your youth, and you connect in a way that we never could. But anyway, so how do you feel about that concern that some politicians, perhaps some parents have that, yeah, we are weaponizing you to take our message forward and our passion forward? So, comments there?
Do you guys mind if I?
No.
Okay.
Reiterate the question too.
I've heard this argument before. I know Ed Stafford got attacked for that for his no idling campaign. We are smarter than you think, and we can make decisions on our own. Thank you very much. Puppets. I didn't get into environmental education until I was out of the house, and so I did it on my own willing accord. And then these guys just kicked butt like right after they got out of like elementary. You guys all did. But we are strong-minded. Thank you very much.
I feel like the facts arise, and when I heard about climate change, I wasn't acting on anyone's accord. I realized the issues myself, and therefore I wanted to take my own personal action. So, yeah, the facts are going to come out regardless, so that's how I just kind of took it.
I think we're all very passionate, and our passion drives what we do. So my mom didn't have to drive me to the zoo every day, but I was passionate and I wanted to make a change, and so I weaponized my mom to,
Yeah, I agree with what they're all saying. None of us are being forced or being told what to do. My mom was not like, I want you to drive down to Draper every single day when you're 15 years old to go talk to random people that you've never seen before. Instead, I was the one that was like, hey mom, I just sent in an application and now you're gonna drive me 30 minutes every day to go talk to people. So I think it's kind of just like, we're not really being weaponized, we're just choosing based off of things that we've heard growing up and based off of our interests that we've had.
Nice. I think a good testament to how to think, not what to think about the environment. So awesome, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
I just had a couple follow-up questions. You talked about a Snapchat story and then microaggressions. Can you teach me more about those two things?
So Snapchat is an app.
I'm wondering how you, like, what is you just post an event on there? Is that what you
Yeah.
Snapchat
So
story? Okay.
yeah. So it is, like, for example, we have our annual tree planting every semester, fall and spring semester, and we just kind of publicize it by showing trees, showing the shovels, and people showing up like it's about to happen, or like y'all are gonna miss out. Make it very catchy. So yeah, we post that on the story. And microaggressions, the list is endless. But for example, as a person of color, someone might ask me, "Where are you from? Where's your family from?" Like on a first basis, when barely getting to know me, which happened on the second day of school for me. Stress. But anyways, first of all, what if I was undocumented? It's kind of one of those things where I don't have to answer to you because of the issues that are happening right now. I would feel unsafe. So that's an example of microaggressions. Or, for example, people like to think that black women are loud. So if you're a black woman, you need to tone it down because you're talking too much or you're talking too loudly. That's another example of a microaggression. So,
Thanks.
yeah.
Any other questions? We got one right over here.
Hi, so the Audubon Society meets at the Ogden Nature Center, that's where I work, the Ogden Nature Center, and the Audubon Society meets every month, and they're always having events, except they don't have anyone younger than 65. I went to their potluck, and it was just a bunch of old people, and me. I was wondering, as young people, how do you combat this, like, meme culture, like this lack of empathy that, like, people our age tend to have, and how do you get, in your opinion, how do you get them to care about going outside and the environment and things like that?
So I kind of come across a similar issue with our events at the aviary. I think it's easy for teens to be like, well, I don't need to go to that event because I've got Google right here that can tell me all I need to know. And so at the Avery, what we do is we entice them with food. So I think if you can find your target audience and kind of understand that audience, then you can kind of sculpt an event that might be targeted towards them. So finding out what they enjoy, what they like, and then going out to them in person. I think we're so used to getting a text from somebody to say come to this event, but I think it's more powerful if you come directly to me face to face and tell me that I might be interested in this. I'm more willing to go than just seeing a flyer online.
When I've recruited for events that have like a really low turnout, the best way I've definitely found is to go into classes, and then you'll like have a really funny presentation, and then when you get signups, you think about 1 in 8 people who just signed up will actually come. Right. So then if you say like I want about 30 people to come, and you get 30 yeah. So you get like 200 something people to sign up, then you're like, okay, I've hit my mark. Is about like how you get for signing up, how you want more people to turn out, and definitely go to them in person, either in classes. Quick, funny presentations usually work. I like to use Homer Simpson a lot in my presentations to get people to come, and then which we're interested in like traveling. And then expanding, like if there's going to be really cool scenes at the event that we can take really cool Instagram pictures on. So yeah, those if those talking about traveling, saying that this is something you could only see in Europe, but it's here in Ogden, like that would be really cool.
Something else that's probably a bit harder, and it's like the word that we always use at work, and it's behavior change. And it's specifically like what my club is trying to focus on. And what I found has worked for me is building that one-on-one connection with people and building that relationship. I personally feel like I grow more with that than a whole big group setting. So I personally like to get to know the students that I'm working with. I like to listen to them. My dad always told me growing up that people just want someone to listen to them. And I swear it's a fact. It has to be. So I just talk to people, and I'm genuine about it, and I want to know, how is your day? And I think once we're connected as friends, you're more inclined to go to my event because we're friends and we want to hang out, we want to plant trees together. So, yeah. Exactly.
So Paige and I were talking the other week about humor. Like, it's great, a lot of old people are showing up to your event. Who doesn't want to go hang out with old people that are really, really cool? Younger generations, if you're having like a lecture where like a scientist is going to come in and talk, and they're like, come learn about the nature of how the aspen trees reproduce in the forest. I feel like reading that title as a younger person, like that doesn't interest me. I don't know if that would interest you guys, maybe if you really like trees. So Paige and I were talking about like, we like people to use humor, whether it's through like a video that you see on social media. I don't know if you guys have seen where it's like, this is the only video I can think of right now. It's like this girl dressed as the earth, and it was like, what if the earth treated people how we treated the earth? And she's dumping trash on the people, like eating lunch and like doing all this stuff. So I think young people react really well to humor, whether it's a funny poster or a funny video or just like a funny comment when they're learning about stuff like that.
Okay, we have time for like 2 more questions. Mary.
I'm so curious to know what was most effective with you in learning about some of these daunting topics ahead. You know, we're all told don't scare kids as educators here. So, but then there's the flip side. I've heard both sides, but they have to know the truth. So, what's most effective for you when you first started getting into EE? You know, hearing about these things like climate change, and did you want to hear the real truth, or did you want to hear the tiptoeing around?
Okay, so for me, I heard the real truth first just by like searching on online, hearing it from people around me, because I've been involved in stuff like this since I was like younger than 15. I've kind of like heard it both ways, and then as I got a little bit older, I started, when I was 18, I got into framing, which is kind of what Stephen and I addressed earlier. So I think I kind of heard the uglier truth a little bit earlier in my life, which made me a little bit more concerned and made me more passionate about wanting to work towards saving the earth and saving the environment and all the animals, which has kind of driven me to like drive less and use no plastic straws and do all this stuff. And then I think when I got introduced into framing, which is this really great thing, if any of you guys are interested, it's by this organization called NAAEE, and they will actually teach you kind of how to deal with climate change, so it gives you like the more positive outlook for these problems that we are going through. So like I was saying earlier, like it teaches you what words you don't use when talking to people. It teaches you about your community-based solutions. It teaches you kind of like step to step how to address climate change, how to address all these different issues going on. So I think some of us were brought in through the ugly truth and then basically learned the better ways so that we don't have to get everyone else around us involved by what we call crisis mode, which is like, oh my gosh, the earth is heating up and in 50 years we're all going to be dead. So you want to address it in a nice way and give it hope for the future, because there definitely is a lot of hope. We're not all going to be dead in 50 years, especially when you see like a big room like this full of people that just care so much about the environment. And I think we all want the earth to be in a very good place, even within like the next 10 years. So I think seeing stuff like that is definitely helping.
Sure, I'll say
I think for me, I was kind of like Elsa. I was very eager and wanted to learn, so I would have a favorite animal and I would look up that animal. One of my favorite animals was the Aimee leopard, and there are less than 80 Aimee leopards left in the wild, and that kind of like shocked me. But what I kind of benefited from was having a solution, and the solution just can't be, let's save animals. I want to know how to save the animals. So if you can come to a little kid, show them the real problem, frame it in a way that doesn't seem too daunting, but then give them specific solutions where they can, in a month, in a week, in a year, they can see the actual outcome and actually see a solution to the problem.
Wonderful. And then I saw one more hand back here. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask, in your experience, do you have any sort of tools, tips, tricks, etc., for folks who would like to engage with diverse communities in a way that's responsible and respectful, and like sort of relevant to all parties involved?
I'm naturalist. I went to the workshop and I feel like they actually did a very well job. They were talking about how they're working with Spanish-speaking communities, and the way they go into it is by not saying, okay, we're here to educate you, because one, that creates a massive divide, and it's automatically assuming that you, the Spanish-speaking community, are uneducated and therefore need my help, need a savior to educate you to develop. No, please do not do that. But they go into the communities not only having materials already translated in Spanish, but also going in with, okay, how can we both work together to get to the same goal? And that whole working together aspect, and realizing that yes, they might tell me no, and they might not want my help, and I'm not going to persist and tell them no, it's what you need. I'm going to walk away, say thank you for your time, and have a good day.
Well, thank you so much. Everyone give this panel a big round of applause. And everyone's lucky enough to have some family here today. So we are going to honor you with an award as being our Beehive 5 under 25. Perfect. So thank you so much for all of your wonderful and thoughtful, engaging questions. They will be, these fabulous four will be here the rest of the day, correct? Awesome. So if you have any additional questions, you can ask them. Our next session will actually begin at 2:10, so you have a quick 10-minute break. And also during that time, if you'd like, you can bid on some silent